Chapter 4: The Hunt. The Coca finished telling the legend of Elkapella, spread out his arms, and pointed in the direction that the smoke Elkapella drifted. "To the hunt, my young ones!" he shouted into the wind. The people of the celebration kept singing as they raised their flutes in celebration. They danced around the council fire until the hunters reached the circles around the encampment. Just as the hunters headed into the forest, Eagleheart was nervous and excited at the same time. He knew that the Elkapella they had seen was just the Coca's creation of smoke and fire. It still encouraged him in his heart. He had been looking forward to his day for as long as he could remember. He tightened his quiver strap, checked his bowstring, knife that were hanging on his belt. He had to run to keep up with his father. That's when he realized that he didn't have his flute. A legend of Elkapella. Elkapella 18, all his people carried a flute starting from birth. They played to celebrate, and they played them to mourn. They were colorful people that had songs and notes for every aspect of their lives. The unique flutes were a symbol of their people and the central tool for the world around them. His grandfather had been using his Coca trainings, teaching them strange sounds, notes that would help their crops grow, and songs that would help their people even have children. His favorite was the unique sounds, notes that could tell the rivers which way to go and the rocks where to rest. If he lost it, it is as long losing a part of himself. How could he even hunt without it? Ahead, his father was walking fast through the trees, dodging low branches, watching the ground for signs. "Hurry, my son," he whispered louder than he wanted to. "Keep your ears open. You will be able to hear the elk calls. They are the same as the flute. Keep your eyes open, nose open to the air." He pointed ahead. "When we are close, you will be able to smell their strong scent." He laughed. "Trust me." Eagleheart tried to keep his sense alert as best could. He did not want to disappoint his father. As he looked around, he noticed that they were heading away from where Elkapella had motioned for them to follow. "Father," he whispered, "Elkapella went in the other direction." Elk grandson stopped and looked back at his son. "I saw nothing. You're listening to your grandfather's foolish ways," he said, more angrily than he meant to. "It's getting in your head. It is an exaggerated story, Eagleheart, not a legend." He knelt down and placed his strong hand on Eagleheart's shoulder. "You must trust in your senses, my son," he said quietly, "not to my father's senseless talk." He patted Eagleheart's head. "Come on, my son. We must go before it gets too hot. The elk will not move once it has entered into the thick trees to keep cool." Eagleheart nodded and started to follow his father when he saw a black figure out of the corner of his eye. "Father," he almost shouted. "Look, it's Elkapella." He pointed excitedly as it disappeared into the trees to the side of them. Elk grandson looked back to where his son was pointing and shook his head. Elkapella is a story. He groaned, trying to keep his 19 JB Mountier temper in check. He didn't like to talk in anger. "I don't see Elkapella." He looked over the path more. "But that does look like a way to other East Meadow and sounds like the river heads that was too." He smiled. "Good job, my boy." Eagleheart was astounded. He had finally seen Elkapella. As they turned, Ho wondered why his father hadn't seen him. Then he remembered his Coca telling him, "Only ones who respect his ways will be able to see Elkapella." Today his father did not. His father motioned for him to slow down, so he watched his moccasins, carefully placing each step. Elk grandson reached back, slowly pulled an arrow from his quiver and nocked it in his bow. He tapped Eagleheart's shoulder and pointed at his nose. He knew what his father meant. He could smell the very strong scent of elk nearby. He put an arrow in his bow as well and adjusted the feathers. He wanted to make sure it would fly straight because he knew his hands were not going to stop shaking. They stopped, spotting a smaller clearing just of them through the trees. There was a sudden loud crack of a thick branch breaking. They seen the bull eagle walking towards them. Eagleheart watched as the elk would take a few steps, then stop and sniff the air. His large head and his antlers turned back and forth as he listened for any unusual sound, watched for any movement. Just behind the bull, there stood a large cow and a smaller one. Elk grandson pulled back his bowstring and took aim at the bull elk. Eagle here could feel his heart start toward Ace as he too pulled back his bowstring. With a sudden swish, he let go of his string. Before he knew it, his father was up like a flash, running to the elk. Eagleheart thought he would beat the arrow. He ran, trying with everything he had to keep up, but the trees were too thick and the earth covered with many tracks, leaves, and paths. Before he knew it, he was lost. Eagleheart's heart was starting to pound more with fear than excitement. He stopped to take a breath and gather his thoughts. A legend of Elkapella 20. Thick trees surrounded him like a tight blanket that he could barely see through. The light from the sun was having a hard time trying to break through the thick branches. He could see only a few feet in, on either side of himself. The trees and half-fallen logs confused his sense of direction. He couldn't even tell if he was wilding up the hills or down. The fear grew deep inside like a rush of cold arrowheads piercing his insides. His stomach tightened in knots. He took in a calming breath and opened his eyes to see fresh elk tracks that had ripped through the ground in front on him. Eagleheart felt a little better now. He knew if he followed them, he would find his father.